Have you ever wondered why some students seem to learn faster, remember longer, and succeed bigger than everyone else? Imagine walking into the famous libraries at Harvard University. You see students sitting quietly, some reading thick books, others writing notes, and many thinking deeply. These students are not smarter by birth. They have simply learned how to study smarter, not just harder. Today, you and I will discover the 6 special study techniques that many Harvard students use. And these are techniques you can start using today wherever you live, whatever you study, and no matter your level of English. This is not just about getting better grades. It is about transforming your whole way of learning so you can understand deeply, remember longer, and feel more confident. At the end of this video, you might realize that studying like a Harvard student is not about having a big brain or spending all night with your books. It is about the small daily habits that create big success. So let's explore these 6 techniques together. By the end, you will have a new study plan that can change your future. Technique 1. Active recall. Learn by asking questions. Have you ever found yourself reading the same page again and again, only to discover later that you can't remember what it said? Many students make this mistake. They believe that if they just keep reading, the information will somehow stay in their minds. But the truth is, reading passively without really testing your mind does not help you remember deeply. Harvard students know a better way. It is called active recall, and it might completely change how you study. Active recall is simple to understand but powerful to use. Instead of reading your notes or your textbook over and over, you stop and ask yourself questions about what you just learned. Then you try to answer these questions from memory without looking at your notes. Only after you've given your answers do you check your book to see what you missed. This small change in your study routine can make a big difference. Why? Because it forces your brain to work harder, and real learning happens when your brain works, not when it just watches. Imagine this. You have just read a page about the causes of the American Revolution. Most students might read the page 2, 3, or even 4 times, hoping it will stick in their memory. But a Harvard student using active recall will do something different. They will close the book and ask themselves, what were the main causes of the American Revolution? Then they will try to speak the answer out loud or write it down in their notebook. After that, they will open the book again to see if they missed any important details. This process may feel slow at first. You might even feel uncomfortable because you realize you don't remember everything. But this feeling is a good sign. It means your brain is actually learning, making connections, and creating stronger memory pathways. The struggle is what makes your brain stronger, just like muscles get stronger by lifting weights. Think of your brain as a muscle in your body. When you go to the gym, you don't get stronger by just watching other people lift weights. You get stronger by doing the work yourself. Active recall is like lifting mental weights. When you read a page and then ask yourself questions, you're forcing your brain to retrieve the information instead of just looking at it again. This retrieval makes the memory stronger each time you practice it. Many students are surprised by how well this works. At first, they feel like they don't know much. But after a few days of using active recall, they start to notice something amazing. They can remember more information without having to look at their notes. Their confidence grows, and studying becomes less stressful. Why? Because they have trained their minds to actually know the information, not just to recognize it on the page. Let's take another example. Imagine you are studying vocabulary for your English exam. Instead of reading the word list again and again, write each word on one side of a flashcard and its meaning on the other. Look at the word. Try to say its meaning out loud, and only then flip the card to check if you were correct. If you were wrong, no problem, try again later. This simple habit can turn a long list of words into real knowledge you can use. Active recall doesn't have to be complicated. You can do it anywhere, on the bus, during a walk, or before going to bed. Simply think of the questions and answer them from memory. Some Harvard students even create practice tests for themselves before the real exam. By testing themselves, they get used to recalling information under pressure, which makes the real exam feel easier. You can also combine active recall with other techniques. For example, after creating a mind map of a topic, cover it up and try to redraw it from memory. Or after explaining something to a friend, using the Feynman Technique, ask yourself questions to see if you still remember the details. The key idea is the same. Make your brain do the work. But why does active recall work so well? Scientists have studied how memory works and found that the brain is not a simple container that holds information. It is more like a network that becomes stronger each time you use it. Every time you force your brain to pull out information, the connections in your brain become stronger. The more often you practice recalling something, the easier it becomes to recall it again in the future. You might wonder, does this mean I should never read my notes again? No, of course not. Reading is still important to understand the topic first. But after your first reading, don't stop there. The real magic happens when you close the book and see what you can remember without help. Then open the book and check what you missed. This cycle study, recall, check is what makes your memory grow stronger. Active recall is also helpful because it shows you what you don't know yet. Sometimes when we only read, we think we know everything because the words look familiar. But when we try to recall from memory, we quickly see which parts we forgot or misunderstood. This honest feedback helps us focus our next study session on the parts we really need to learn. So how can you start using active recall today? Here are a few easy ideas. After each study session, write 5 questions about what you learned. Answer them tomorrow without looking. Use flashcards to test your memory on key facts, dates, or vocabulary. Explain a topic to yourself out loud and see if you can do it without notes. Create short quizzes for yourself and try to complete them at the end of the week. Remember, active recall feels harder than passive reading, and that's exactly why it works. It may feel slow at first, but the results are faster learning and better memory. Over time, you will become the kind of student who truly understands, remembers, and can explain what you've learned. In the end, studying like a Harvard student isn't about being born smarter. It's about studying smarter. And active recall is one of the smartest ways to make your brain stronger every single day. Start small, be consistent, and watch your memory grow. Your future self will thank you. Technique 2. Spaced repetition. Review at the right time. Have you ever tried to memorize something by reading it again and again the night before the test? Maybe you stayed up very late, reading and rereading your notes, hoping that the words would stay in your mind. Many students do this, believing it is the fastest way to remember everything. But there is a problem. The next morning, or a few days later, most of that information is gone. Why does this happen? Because our brains do not like to keep information that we see only once, even if we see it many times in a single night. The secret that many Harvard students use is different. They do not try to force their brain to remember everything in one day. Instead, they use a technique called spaced repetition, which helps the brain remember for a long time by reviewing information at just the right moments. Spaced repetition is a simple idea, but it works very powerfully. When you learn something new today, you do not wait until the exam to look at it again. Instead, you review it tomorrow. Then you look at it again after 3 days, then a week later, and again after 2 weeks. Each time you review, you help the information move from your short-term memory into your long-term memory. This is like planting a seed in the ground. If you water it too much in one day, it might drown and die. But if you water it a little bit every few days, it grows strong roots and becomes a healthy plant. In the same way, your memory grows stronger when you review information over time, instead of trying to memorize it all at once. Let's imagine you are learning new vocabulary words in English. Today, you write down 10 new words in your notebook. Tomorrow, you look at them again and test yourself. Can you remember the meanings? Maybe you forget some words, so you review those again. 3 days later, you test yourself again. This time, you remember more words. After a week, you do it again. And finally, 2 weeks later, you check once more. You will be surprised to see that most of the words stay in your memory without needing to study them every single day. Why does this happen? Because every time you recall the words after waiting a little longer, your brain must work harder to remember them. This effort makes the memory stronger, just like exercising a muscle. The best time to review is right before you're about to forget. By doing this, you keep the memory alive and make it stronger each time. Many Harvard students use special tools to help them do spaced repetition. Apps like Anki and Quizlet are very popular because they automatically remind you when it is time to review something. You don't have to remember the schedule yourself. The app does it for you. When you use these apps, you create digital flashcards. The app tracks which cards you know well and which ones you forget. It then shows you the difficult cards more often and the easy ones less often. This saves time and helps you focus on what you really need to review. But you do not need to use an app if you don't want to. You can also do spaced repetition with paper flashcards or even with a notebook. Write down the topic or word you want to learn, and next to it, write the review dates. Tomorrow, 3 days later, a week later, and 2 weeks later. Put these dates on your calendar or planner. When the day comes, test yourself to see what you remember. If you still forget some parts, add an extra review date until you remember it easily. The most important part of spaced repetition is the idea of reviewing before you completely forget. If you wait too long, you might forget everything, and you will have to learn it from the beginning. If you review too soon, you will waste time because you still remember it well. Finding the right balance is what makes this technique so powerful. You might wonder, doesn't this take more time? Actually, it saves time in the long run. When you cram, study everything in one night, you forget quickly, so you have to study again and again. But when you use spaced repetition, each review takes only a few minutes, and the information stays with you for weeks, months, or even years. This means you spend less total time studying, but your memory becomes much stronger. This technique is not only useful for vocabulary. You can use spaced repetition for history dates, science facts, math formulas, or anything else you need to remember. It helps your brain store information more deeply so you don't panic before exams. Many Harvard students say that this habit makes them feel calmer and more prepared because they never have to learn everything at the last minute. Think about how this could change your daily routine. Instead of long, stressful study sessions, you could spend just 10 to 20 minutes each day reviewing old material. Then, when you learn something new, you add it to your list. Every day, your knowledge becomes a little stronger. Over time, this small habit creates big results. Spaced repetition also works well with the other techniques. You can combine it with active recall by testing yourself during your review sessions. You can use it with the Pomodoro Method to keep your study time short and focused. And you can even use it to review your mind maps or notes you created with the Feynman Technique. Remember, your brain is not made to learn everything at once. It loves small reviews over time. Harvard students know this secret, and now you know it too. You don't have to be at Harvard to use spaced repetition. All you need is a notebook, a calendar, or an app, and the decision to start today. So tonight, look at what you studied today. Make a plan to review it tomorrow, then again in a few days, and then next week. Keep this habit going. In a few weeks, you will notice that remembering becomes easier, your confidence will grow, and studying will feel less stressful. This is the power of reviewing at the right time. Start small, stay consistent, and let your brain do what it does best. Remember what truly matters. Technique 3, the Feynman Technique, teach to learn. Have you ever read something and felt like you understood it, only to discover later that you couldn't explain it to someone else? This happens to many students. At first, everything makes sense in our mind. But when we try to say it out loud or write it down, we realize we don't truly understand it as well as we thought. This is why many Harvard students use a special technique called the Feynman Technique named after the famous physicist Richard Feynman. Feynman was known not only for his brilliant discoveries in physics, but also for his amazing skill in explaining complex ideas in simple words. His secret was this: if you can't explain something simply, it means you don't understand it deeply enough yet. The Feynman technique starts with a very simple idea: learn by teaching. When you study a topic, don't just read it and keep it in your head. Instead, pretend you need to teach it to someone else, a classmate, a friend, a younger sibling, or even just to yourself. Imagine your listener knows nothing about the topic. Your goal is to explain it so clearly and simply that they can understand it, even without background knowledge. This forces your brain to organize what you know, find connections, and turn complicated ideas into clear thoughts. Let's say you are studying photosynthesis in biology. After reading about it, you close your book and try to explain it out loud. You might say, photosynthesis is the process by which plants make food from sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. The plant uses sunlight to change these things into glucose, which is a kind of sugar. If you find yourself using big words that you don't fully understand, or if you get stuck trying to explain why something happens, this shows you where your understanding is weak. Then, you go back to your book or notes, learn that part again, and repeat the process until you can explain it smoothly and confidently. The beauty of the Feynman technique is that it doesn't need any special tools. You don't need expensive software, a big whiteboard, or a real classroom. You can do it anytime and anywhere. For example, after you finish reading a topic, take 5 minutes to speak out loud to yourself as if you are giving a mini lecture. Or write what you would say in a notebook. Use simple words and short sentences, as if your listener is a beginner. The more you do this, the clearer your understanding becomes. Many Harvard students use this technique not just before exams, but as part of their daily study routine. After each lecture or reading session, they spend a few minutes summarizing what they learned in their own words. Some even make short videos or audio recordings explaining topics, which they can listen to later to check their clarity. This habit helps them notice what they truly know and what they only think they know. It turns passive reading into active learning. Another powerful part of the Feynman technique is that it helps you discover gaps in your knowledge. When you read, everything can seem familiar because your brain is just recognizing words on the page. But when you try to teach, you must create the explanation yourself. This is much harder, and that's why it works. The moment you struggle to explain something is the moment you find out what you don't fully understand yet. Instead of being discouraged by this, see it as a gift. Now you know exactly where to focus your next study session. Let's look at another example. Suppose you are studying the difference between mitosis and meiosis in cell biology. You read your notes, then close them and try to explain. Mitosis is, it's how cells divide, and meiosis is for reproduction? You realize your explanation isn't clear, so you go back to your notes, learn again, and then try to explain. Mitosis is the process that makes two identical cells from one parent cell. Meiosis is different because it creates 4 cells, each with half the number of chromosomes, which are used in sexual reproduction. Now your explanation is clearer and shows deeper understanding. You can also combine the Feynman technique with other techniques. For example, after doing active recall, you might find topics you couldn't remember well. Then you use the Feynman technique to teach those topics to yourself, making them clearer in your mind. Or you can review your mind map by explaining each branch in your own words. The Feynman technique also helps reduce exam anxiety. When you get used to explaining topics without notes, you train your brain to recall and speak under pressure, just like in an exam situation. Many students say that after practicing this way, they feel calmer and more confident during real tests because explaining becomes natural. And remember, teaching doesn't have to be perfect. Even if you get stuck, that moment teaches you something valuable about what you don't understand yet. Over time, your explanations become smoother and simpler. You also learn to see connections between topics that you might have missed before. You can make this technique a daily habit. At the end of each study session, spend just 5 or 10 minutes explaining what you learned out loud. If you don't want to speak, write it in your notebook. If you have a study group, take turns teaching each other topics from your notes. The key is to keep it simple, clear, and honest. In the end, the Feynman technique isn't just about memorizing facts. It's about truly understanding ideas so deeply that you can share them with anyone. This is what turns average understanding into real mastery. Harvard students use this technique because they know that being able to teach something shows you have learned it well. And now, you can use it too. So tonight, after you finish studying, don't just close your book and move on. Instead, take a few minutes to teach what you learned to yourself, to a friend, or even to an empty room. You will be surprised by how much clearer and more confident you feel. Remember, if you can't explain it simply, you don't fully understand it yet. And when you can explain it simply, you know you've truly learned it. Technique 4, Pomodoro Method. Focus in short bursts. Have you ever tried to study for hours and hours, only to find that you can't remember most of what you read? Maybe you feel tired. Your mind starts to wander and you end up looking at your phone, thinking about dinner, or daydreaming about something else. Many students believe that studying for long periods without stopping is the best way to learn. But Harvard students often know a smarter secret. The brain works better when we focus for short bursts, not endless hours. This is why many of them use the Pomodoro Method, a simple time management technique that can completely change how you study. The Pomodoro Method is named after the Italian word for tomato, because its inventor, Francesco Cirillo, first used a tomato-shaped kitchen timer to test his idea. The technique itself is very simple, but its power comes from discipline and habit. Here's how it works. First, you choose one task you want to work on. It could be reading a chapter, solving math problems, or reviewing vocabulary words. Next, you set a timer for 25 minutes. During these 25 minutes, you do nothing else. No phone, no social media, no texting, and no daydreaming. Your only job is to focus on that single task. When the timer rings, you stop, even if you feel like you could keep going. Then you take a short 5-minute break. You can stand up, stretch, drink some water, look out of the window, or take a short walk. After the break, you set the timer again for another 25 minutes of focused work. This cycle 25 minutes of study plus a 5-minute break is called a Pomodoro. After doing 4 Pomodoros, which adds up to about 2 hours of real study time, you take a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes. This longer break helps your mind rest and reset so you can stay productive for the rest of the day. At first, this method might sound too simple to make a difference, but many Harvard students and successful learners around the world say it completely changed how they study. Why? Because our brains are not built to stay deeply focused for many hours at a time. Most people can only really concentrate for about 20 to 30 minutes before their mind naturally wants to rest. The Pomodoro Method works with this natural rhythm instead of fighting against it. Knowing that a break is coming soon makes it easier to start studying. Often, the hardest part of studying is not the studying itself, it's convincing ourselves to begin. When you think, I only have to do 25 minutes, it feels less scary and more doable. And during those 25 minutes, it becomes easier to ignore distractions because you know it won't last forever. It's like telling your brain, let's just do this for a little while. This short promise helps you overcome procrastination. Imagine this. Instead of telling yourself, I have to study for 3 hours tonight, you say, I'll do 1 Pomodoro. You set your timer, sit down, and focus. After the first 25 minutes, you might feel motivated to do another Pomodoro and then maybe another. By breaking big tasks into small parts, studying feels lighter and more manageable. Another powerful part of the Pomodoro Method is what happens during the breaks. When you step away from your desk, your brain keeps working quietly in the background. This is called diffuse thinking, and it helps your brain make connections and process information in new ways. Sometimes you might even come back from your break with a new idea or a clearer understanding of something that felt confusing before. You don't need a special timer to use this method. You can use your phone's timer, an online Pomodoro timer, or even a simple kitchen timer. Some students also write down how many Pomodoros they do each day. This helps them see their progress over time and feel proud of their effort, not just the final result. What if 25 minutes feels too long at first? That's okay. You can start smaller. Try 15 or even 10 minutes. The important thing is not the exact number of minutes. It's the habit of focused study followed by a real break. Over time, as your focus improves, you can slowly increase to 25 minutes or more if you want. The Pomodoro Method can also help with other study techniques. For example, you can use a Pomodoro session for active recall, asking yourself questions about what you just learned. Or you can use it to create a mind map, practice the Feynman Technique, or do spaced repetition reviews. By combining Pomodoros with these techniques, your study time becomes even more powerful. Many students say that this method turns studying from something heavy and boring into something lighter and even enjoyable. Instead of feeling trapped at your desk, you create a rhythm. Study, rest, study, rest. The breaks become small rewards that keep you motivated. And because your focus is sharper, you often finish your work faster than you would by studying for hours with a tired mind. Another benefit is that the Pomodoro Method helps protect your mental health. Long, stressful study sessions can lead to burnout, where you feel tired, unmotivated, and even anxious. But when you build in regular breaks, you protect your energy and keep your mind fresh. Imagine finishing a study session and still feeling awake enough to enjoy your evening, spend time with family, or do something fun. That's the gift of studying smarter, not longer. In the end, the Pomodoro Method is a simple tool, but it can change your whole relationship with studying. Instead of fighting your brain's natural need for rest, you work with it. Instead of fearing big tasks, you break them into small, doable parts. So tonight, why not try it? Choose one task. Set a timer for 25 minutes. Put your phone away, close your other tabs, and just focus. When the timer rings, take a short break. See how you feel after just 2 or 3 Pomodoros. You might be surprised at how much you get done and how much calmer you feel. Remember, it's not about the clock. It's about giving your brain the focus and rest it needs to learn at its best. And that's how many Harvard students and now you study in short bursts, stay motivated, and avoid burnout. Technique 5. Interleaving. Mix different subjects. Have you ever sat at your desk and studied just one subject for many hours? Maybe you spent the whole morning doing math exercises or the whole afternoon reading history notes. At first, this can feel comforting because it feels organized and simple. You can stay in one zone and not have to switch your mind from one topic to another. Many students believe this is the best way to learn. But Harvard students often know a surprising truth. Studying one subject for hours might feel easier, but it is not always the best for deep, long-term learning. That is why many of them use a technique called Interleaving a method, where you mix different subjects or topics during your study time. At first, interleaving sounds strange. Why mix topics? Won't it make you confused? The answer is that it might feel confusing in the beginning, and that's exactly why it works. Our brains are designed to learn better when they are forced to work a little harder, not just repeat the same kind of thinking again and again. Interleaving is like exercise for your mind. Just as athletes do different kinds of training to get stronger overall, mixing different subjects helps your brain become more flexible, creative, and strong. Let's imagine your study plan for the afternoon. Instead of reading history for 2 hours straight, you decide to study history for 30 minutes. Then you do 30 minutes of math problems. After that, you read an English article or practice vocabulary. Then you return to history for another 30 minutes. By the end of the session, you have covered 3 subjects instead of just 1. You may feel like it was more challenging, but research shows that this challenge helps your brain remember more and understand better. Why does this happen? Because interleaving forces your brain to switch between different kinds of thinking. When you move from history to math, your mind must adjust from remembering facts and dates to solving logical problems. Then, when you read an English text, your brain works on language skills, vocabulary, and comprehension. Switching back to history, your brain has to recall what you studied earlier and connect it to what you are learning now. This back and forth makes your memory pathways stronger and helps you see connections you might have missed if you stayed with just one subject. Many Harvard students say that interleaving helps them feel more prepared for real exams too. Exams usually don't test just one kind of thinking. In a single test, you might answer short answer questions, write an essay, and solve a problem. By practicing switching between subjects, you train your brain to be ready for anything. It's like learning to dance to different rhythms instead of always practicing the same step. Some students worry that mixing subjects will make them more confused. But this feeling of struggle is actually a sign that your brain is learning deeply. It shows that your mind is working to organize, compare, and make sense of the new information. This struggle makes the knowledge stick better in your memory. Think of it like lifting slightly heavier weights in the gym. It feels harder, but it makes you stronger. Let's look at another example. Suppose you are studying science. Instead of spending the whole evening only on biology, try mixing biology with physics and chemistry. You might study photosynthesis in biology for 20 minutes, then move to Newton's laws in physics for 20 minutes, and then study chemical reactions for 20 minutes. In your next cycle, return to biology and test yourself on what you learned earlier. This helps your brain make connections between topics. For example, understanding how energy from the sun, which you studied in biology, is related to physical laws of motion and energy in physics. Interleaving doesn't only work between different subjects. You can also mix different topics within the same subject. For example, if you are studying math, instead of practicing 20 similar problems in a row, mix different kinds of problems. One on algebra, one on geometry, then one on word problems, and so on. This helps your brain learn to choose the right method for each question, instead of getting used to using the same method over and over. Another benefit of interleaving is that it keeps study sessions more interesting. Studying the same thing for hours can feel boring and make your mind wander. But when you know you will switch topics soon, you often stay more alert and curious. Each new subject feels fresh, and you come back to earlier subjects with a new perspective. Many Harvard students combine interleaving with other techniques too. For example, they use the Pomodoro Method to study in short sessions of 25 minutes and then switch subjects after each Pomodoro. They also use active recall while switching by testing themselves on the last subject before starting the next one. This way, they build strong memory connections and keep study time efficient. You don't need to plan a perfect schedule to start interleaving. Even small steps help. Next time you sit to study, instead of spending the whole time on one topic, mix 2 or 3 subjects. Try 30 minutes each, or even 20 minutes if that feels easier. Notice how your mind feels more challenged, and how you start to remember better after a few days. At first, it might feel messy, and you might think, am I really learning? But remember, real learning happens when your brain feels a little uncomfortable. The confusion means your mind is working hard to make sense of new information and to build stronger pathways. In the end, interleaving is not about making studying harder. It is about making it smarter. It helps you see patterns, make connections, and train your brain to think flexibly skills that matter far beyond exams. Harvard students use it because it works, and now you can use it too. So next time you sit down to study, ask yourself, how can I mix this up? Try history, then math, then English. Mix topics, test yourself, and come back to them later. Over time, you will see that your memory becomes sharper, your understanding deeper, and your study time more effective. That is the power of interleaving, training your brain to be ready for anything by mixing different subjects every day. Technique 6. Mind mapping. See the big picture. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by all the facts, dates, and ideas you need to remember? Maybe you read a long chapter and think, how can I keep all of this in my mind? Many students face this problem, especially when the topic is large and complex. But Harvard students often use a simple visual tool to help them understand, organize, and remember what they study. This tool is called mind mapping. It is not only about drawing. It is about seeing how everything fits together, like pieces of a puzzle. A mind map starts with a blank page and a central idea. For example, if you are learning about the causes of World War II, write World War II causes in the center of your page. Then, draw thick lines like tree branches going out from the center. Each branch represents a big category, such as political factors, economic factors, social factors, and military factors. From these main branches, draw smaller branches that show the details. Under political factors, you might write Rise of Hitler, Treaty of Versailles, or Failure of the League of Nations. Under economic factors, you might write Great Depression, unemployment, and economic instability. And you keep branching out until you see the topic clearly in front of you. Why is this so helpful? Because your brain loves images and connections. When you look at a mind map, you don't just see a list of words. You see relationships, patterns, and the big picture. Instead of remembering facts in isolation, you remember them as part of a story. And because you create the map yourself, it becomes your mental picture. Later, when you think of the topic, your mind can see the branches and remember what was on each one. Some students worry they need to be good at drawing to make a mind map. But the truth is, you don't need artistic skills. You only need paper and a pen. If you want, you can use colors, arrows, and symbols to make it clearer and more memorable. For example, use red for political topics, green for economic topics, and blue for social topics. Draw stars next to the most important points or arrows to show cause and effect. The creative part helps you remember because it forces you to engage with the material, not just copy it. Mind mapping can be used for any subject. In literature, you can create a mind map for a book. Write the title in the center, then branch out to main characters, themes, events, and symbols. In science, you can map a concept like photosynthesis with branches for sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and glucose. In language learning, you might make a mind map for new vocabulary around a topic like travel, with branches like transport, accommodation, and activities. Each mind map becomes a quick visual summary you can review anytime. What makes mind mapping so powerful is that it combines creativity with structure. You are not just memorizing. You are building a picture of knowledge that makes sense to you. This process helps your brain organize information and remember it more easily. Over time, you will discover that creating mind maps is also fun. It makes studying feel less like work and more like discovery. But mind mapping does not work alone. You might wonder, which of the 6 study techniques should you use? The answer is, use them together. Each technique helps your brain in a different way, and together, they create a strong system for learning. Active recall helps you test your memory by asking questions instead of just reading. Spaced repetition makes you review at the right moments so you don't forget. The Feynman Technique helps you explain topics in simple words, showing what you truly understand. Pomodoro Method keeps your focus sharp with short, timed study sessions and breaks. Interleaving helps you see connections by mixing different subjects instead of studying only one at a time. And mind mapping helps you see the big picture by turning facts into a visual story. Imagine what your day might look like if you studied this way. In the morning, you start with a Pomodoro. You read a topic, then close your book and test yourself using active recall. During your 5-minute break, you stretch, breathe, or drink water. Then, in your next Pomodoro, you use the Feynman Technique to explain what you learned out loud or in writing. Later in the day, you do spaced repetition with flashcards, reviewing what you studied yesterday and last week. You mix your subjects using interleaving. 20 minutes of history, then math, then science. And at night, you draw a mind map to connect everything you studied. Each day, these small steps build your knowledge, memory, and confidence. You won't need to stay up all night before exams because you will have been learning actively every day. You won't feel lost when a teacher asks a question because you won't just remember the words, you will understand them. And you will have more free time because you study smarter, not longer. But there is something even more important than these tools: the mindset of a Harvard student. These students often believe 3 key things. First, learning is active, not passive. They don't just read, they question, test, explain, and create. Second, failure is feedback, not defeat. If they forget something, they see it as a sign to review, not as proof they can't learn. Third, small steps every day beat big efforts once in a while. They don't wait until the last minute. They build habits, knowing that real success comes from what you do consistently, not what you do once. The best part? You don't need to be at Harvard to use these ideas. You can use them anywhere starting today. You can draw your own mind maps, quiz yourself, mix subjects, and study in short bursts. Over time, these habits can change not only your grades, but also how you see yourself as a learner. The tools are here. The question is, will you use them? Start today. Draw your first mind map. Test yourself with one question. Study for 25 minutes without your phone. And tomorrow, do it again. Little by little, you will discover what many Harvard students have learned. The real secret is not studying harder. It's studying smarter, with curiosity, courage, and consistency. Final thoughts: you can do this. Many people believe that Harvard students are born geniuses with special talents, but the truth is very different. Most Harvard students are just regular people who learned how to study in a smart and effective way. They did not wait for perfect conditions, expensive courses, or magic tricks. They started with small steps and kept practicing every day. And guess what? You can do the same, no matter where you are or what school you attend. The most important thing is to start now. Don't wait until tomorrow or next week. Pick one technique from the ones we talked about. For example, start with active recall. Tonight, after your study session, close your book and ask yourself questions about what you just learned. Try to answer without looking. This simple habit will make your memory much stronger. Tomorrow, try adding spaced repetition by reviewing the same material again after a day or two. The day after that, you can begin practicing the Feynman Technique by explaining what you learned in your own words. Build your skills step by step, little by little. If you want more help and motivation on this journey, remember to check out my channel, English Achieve. Here you will find many videos and lessons to support you in learning English and studying smarter every day. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. You will remember more, understand topics more deeply, and feel confident in your studies. You don't have to go to Harvard to study like a Harvard student. The secret is not the place or the school. It is the practice and habits you build. So now ask yourself, which technique will you start with today? Write it down, tell a friend or family member, and most importantly, begin. Your brain will thank you, your future self will thank you, and your whole life will change. Remember, studying smart is not just for exams. It is for your whole life. You can do this.